pleasure to welcome to the stage Stephanie Blank, our club's chair, to introduce today's program.
Thank you, President John. So I'm about to do the shortest introduction in the history of introductions because Mr. Jackson said to, and because we have so much to get through. But Rick Jackson is Chairman and Chief Executive Officer, as well as founder of Jackson Healthcare, an organization he launched in 2000, which has steadily expanded through a mix of acquisition, organic growth, and today includes 19 healthcare staffing, search, and technology companies that are all leaders and innovators in their respective markets. Over the course of his career, Rick has been instrumental in conceptualizing and developing more than 25 healthcare companies, which we will learn more about in his interview. And one of the things that I am really excited for you all to learn more about is that Rick is also a former foster child and is driven by a personal mission. We talked a little bit about purpose earlier this morning, to inject hope and opportunity into the lives of underserved children and young people. I'm going to save all of the rest for our interview, so please join me in welcoming to the stage Rick Jackson. Was that short enough?
Yes, almost.
So, first of all, thank you, Rick, for being here today. I first met Rick over a decade ago when we were both working on the issues facing our foster youth. So I've actually known Rick for a fair amount of time now. But even with all of that, you were a bit of an enigma in Atlanta. You stay out of the limelight. I saw his CFO is here today, Leslie, if you want to. And I was like, I didn't think anybody was coming. She said, Rick didn't tell any of us he was speaking today. So he really stays out of the limelight, even though you are the founder and CEO of one of the largest privately held healthcare companies in the U.S. I believe you're the largest private and the third largest if you include the public ones. So, but the story of Rick Jackson, serial entrepreneur, CEO, really can't be told without first knowing the story of Rick Jackson, the child. And I would like for you to share with the audience a little bit about your backstory, because that's shaped so much of who you are today.
Glad to. I never talked about this before, about 15, 20 years ago, actually. I didn't think it was that important, but I'd be glad to share it with you. I was born in Atlanta. I was born at, back then, Baptist Medical Center that's now gone away. And so I went to 8 different elementary schools. I had no father. I had 7 stepfathers that came in and out of our lives from time to time. My mother was an alcoholic. She was a 6th grade educated person, but she was a fantastic waitress. She worked at all the nicest restaurants, some of the old restaurants here in Atlanta and so forth. But it became a point in time I was by myself a lot. I lived mostly in Techwood homes. Some of you guys that are older will remember that before the Olympics tore it down and rebuilt and so forth like that. And then at that point in time, I ran away to go to DFACS. I didn't know that's what I was doing, but that's what I did. And so I entered the foster care system, went through 4 or 5 foster homes, Methodist Children's Home, and then ended up with a great family and came out of that system. Obviously, what happens in that environment is you get very, very street smart. The entrepreneurism came from doing paper routes, working $25 cents an hour at Joy Market right there on Techwood Drive, doing all, scalping tickets at Georgia Tech. I'd literally go with a T-shirt that had a hole in it, says, "Anybody got any extra tickets?" I knew what. And then they give me 2 tickets. They say, "Come on in." And I said, "Well, let me take my friend. I'll see you," and go to the other corner and say. So you get a little street smart in trying to figure out a way to make ends meet and so forth, because we had problems paying our $26 a month rent there on Techwood.
So despite all of those hardships and obstacles, as you just mentioned, you did learn a lot of life lessons from that experience. But one of the things that you shared with me that you really learned was the importance of education and the difference you saw in communities.
Yeah, from my standpoint, we were taught, not dissimilar to what you hear some narratives today, but we were taught that the rich people were bad. And the only reason, because they took advantage of us poor people and so forth like that. And we referred to them, even though I was white, to the man, even back then. And so it was, and then I started going to church. And I started seeing people that to me were, they have a bus that can come by and pick up people. I went by myself. And I'd see these rich people, they had a car, they went out to lunch, and some of them had a house and so forth. And they seemed like nice people. I was trying to get a disconnect between these rich people and bad people and so forth. But my perception was that as a child and as a young person, it was not the rich versus the poor, or black versus white. The dividing line to me was education. I saw it very, very clearly, where you have people that are educated and focus on that. My family did not focus on that, but I saw that it was a necessity. Even though I did not have money to go to school, I recognized how important it was, and hired at a young age in a small business, hired a PhD from Georgia State to help me to overcome the lack of formal education.
So you had the street smarts, you had the smarts to hire people as well, but how did Jackson Healthcare come into being? Where did that come from, and how did you do that?
Well, because I didn't have a degree, back then it was very important. In 1973, 74, you couldn't get a job at Citizens and Southern, I think it was the name of it at the time, or anywhere else without a degree. And so the only way I was going to get to the top is start there. So I basically, I started my own company at age 21, and I went to, they wouldn't hire me because I didn't have a degree. It was a search company that recruited, back then it was called secretaries, recruited clerical people. And so they wouldn't hire me, and I asked them, well, if I did have a degree and you did hire somebody, what would you pay them? And they said, well, we pay them, $900 a month and 40% commission against the 40% commission. And I said, well, what if I work for no money except for 33% straight commission? Would you hire me? And they did. And a year from that date, I bought that company. That gentleman left. It was 3 people. Sorry. And so since that time in 1975, I was 21 at the time, I've been an owner. So like I said, I decided just to start there and that was my entrepreneurial get into business and make sure I have.
So instead of leadership lessons, should we have the next session be sales lessons?
Well, when you're street smart, there's a fine line. If you've grown poor, you can go to the left or the right as a con artist. Okay, you can do it for the right reason or use your skills to help sell and so forth like that. And so I just decided that I would try to utilize those skills to do it in the right way. But sales is, when you don't have a degree in other things, being persuasive is just very important. And then in dealing with people in general. And then I learned later on how to professionalize that, not as a salesperson, because most people won't see me as a salesperson because I ask a lot of questions and stuff like that.
And so back to Jackson Healthcare. Why healthcare? What made you see that?
Well, this first business I bought, the guy I bought it from, I could tell real quick I needed to go into something that had more fees. Our average fee was $900. Okay, to make a placement. So I got in. He was doing healthcare executive search, and I said, well, can I come back to work there? I sold that business, worked there another year, and then bought the rights to do physician search only from him. He was doing accounting and other things. I just did physician search. That was in 70. And so I just lucked up into healthcare. Now, I did recognize real early that I liked it because it was recession-proof back then. because people get sick in good times and bad times. And so they always need people and so forth. So it was, it kind of lucked up in the fact that I got into that category. And so that's how it started. I will roll forward 20 years or so. I built several different companies, the third largest surgery center, several largest multi-site practices in pain, plastic surgery, ENT, and a couple of small hospitals down in South Georgia. And then we went public with one of our companies. I was chairman, and I had to take it over to file Chapter 11 in 1996. Obviously, everybody told me I didn't need to do that, but I just felt like that vendors did not go into business to be risk takers. And so it was the 4 longest years of my life. The good news is that you can look it up. I got plenty of attorneys that'll keep me honest in here. We paid 110 cents a dollar on the creditors and gave back money to equity. And the way we did that is that I borrowed a lot of money in buying the 2 smallest businesses, the only 2 businesses left in 2000. And at that time, that was a good half time to say, what do you do good and not so good in your life? And so I came up with some fundamental values the principles that I learned. Number 1 was from Buffett, read everything about him. And I found that the long-term hold was going to be, I just really bought into that because I would start, build, and flip companies, and then these PE firms would come in here in 2 years and get twice as much as I made off of it. I was like, how does that work? And so the long-term hold was important. The other was focus on what I knew what to do. I did a lot of things I don't know what to do. I still do, but that's another story. But then the third one was I would never have outside money again, which meant the only way we could grow was through profits, period. And that gave us discipline like you won't believe. When you've got to make payroll Monday and you can't borrow the money, it puts a lot of pressure on you. At that time, we were at 20 million revenue in 2000 when we made those decisions. And today, last trailing 12 was over $3 billion. And we've never had outside equity during that whole time.
So one of the things that also differentiates Jackson is that your structure is a little bit different. You call it a venture holding company. What does that mean? What are the advantages it confers?
It's a made-up term that we just created personally, but people ask us about how it works. They see us as one company, Jackson Healthcare, and that's a little bit misleading. We believe in decentralized, focused companies doing 1 or 2 things, period. And then we believe in having a president, having accountability, giving them the support they need, but getting out of their way. And so and a lot of that was because I knew how to start a business. I knew small businesses, and so the way I thought we would get large is just have a bunch of small businesses. And so that's what we've done. And we're starting a new company this year, for instance. And so we keep building and starting, but every company. So when I'm talking to financial people, I say venture holding because we're like a equity firm that knows operations, though, that we really add value. Most PE firms that I was a partner in New York with Healthcare Investment Corp, and they only had 2 solutions to everything, 2 bullets in their gun to solve every problem. It was either put more money in it or get a new CEO. That's all they knew how to do, And I'm on their meetings saying, well, all I got to do is reposition and strategy, and all that. So we just believe that we add more than that, and that's good because when we hire or when we do an acquisition, which is not often, people like that environment.
So you mentioned that you don't have outside investors. How much pressure has there been on you to go public, and would you ever consider that?
Is Bank of America here? They've come to us many times, but we decided that we were going to go for the long-term hold. We like the idea that we make decisions based off of what's can happen 5 years from now, not a quarterly earnings and so forth. It probably was partly my fault is that I don't know how to deal with outside people that don't know what they're doing. As a board. And so I just don't know how to deal with that. And I just feel like they create some dysfunctions in some businesses and so forth. And most of it is money driven. And I don't have any problem with that. I'll invest in those kind of businesses. But people that are driving things based off of putting in money, getting a return, run their business is totally different. I get it. It's built for an exit. But the other thing is that we felt like in having influence, that having a good company where we're doing things we hope as good as possible may have a further impact from that standpoint. And so we just decided to, unless something catastrophic happens internally or something like that, we have no plans to ever sell, even though we could have done that many, many times over.
So I mentioned you're a little bit of an enigma, and it seems you're that way in the business world as well, kind of going your own way. So one of the themes of President John's presidency this year at Rotary is around leadership. So how would you describe your leadership style? I know one of the things that you have shared with me is that you believe that lessons are often caught, not taught. And how does that translate, and how do you lead your people?
Well, we used to have like 20 cultural principles, and they're down to 3. Our main one is called Others First. And I don't mean that actually as a dog whistle to religion, to be honest, but even though that's a part of it, and I don't believe it's a bumper sticker. I mean, others before self and so forth like that. I believe it's a strategy of success. And when I mean others first, I mean whoever you're serving, whether it's your employees, whether it's your customers for sure, and anybody that you deal with, the stakeholders, our lawyers. I want, y'all don't listen to this. They're all sitting over there. I didn't ask them here, by the way. I want them to be successful. I'm committed to making sure it works for them and everybody else. But by doing that, and by the way, I'm not a professional victim. You don't get out of the slums and become a professional victim and become successful. You can't do it that way. I'm not saying others only. What I'm saying is look at it from their viewpoint first. And when you do, as professionals, lawyers and other people, you can do a better job. And sometimes that may mean they should not do business with you because it's not in their best interest. So from my standpoint, I was teaching 10th graders a long time ago in church, and one of them asked me, well, how do I become a millionaire? And I said, you're asking the wrong question. What can you do for somebody else that's worth more than $1 million? That's a different question. And so when you're looking at from an others first standpoint, helping others get what they want and become successful is ultimately going to make you successful. If you create 50 millionaires by helping them and so forth, it's going to be hard for you not to have some sort of success when you look at it from that standpoint. The other thing is we've created 5 businesses out of that concept. And I was at a client a long time ago, and they kept having turnover in their anesthesia. They had temporary doctors, and I said, what's the problem? What's going on? And I found out they have a management leadership problem. And so we started a company called Premier Anesthesia because that's the solution. They need somebody to run that, to staff it, be responsible for it, integrate it with the hospital and so forth like that.
And you have your president here today, right?
Yeah, he's here. I didn't invite him either, but he's here.
This is a common refrain. But it says something about your leadership that they all showed up even though they weren't invited.
Well, I really didn't invite because I don't know about you guys, but I don't want somebody to feel like they politically have to go hear the president. I don't want to put that kind of pressure on them. So I don't know who got the memo out. I think it was our attorneys that told them.
So if I were to ask them, what would they say your leadership style is?
I don't know. I hope it's what I'd tell you. I think everybody, especially that reports directly, knows that there is nobody that's in their corner professionally more than I am. Nobody. I hope they feel that way because that's the way I feel. And so anything I can do to help them be successful, I'm going to do it. And sometimes that requires, not so comfortable conversations. But if it's truly in their best interest, and so I will do everything I can to be committed to success. And so I hope that they would tell you that, and you'll have to talk to them in the hall and ask them.
So in 2008, you created the Jackson campus up in Alpharetta, which, from what I have heard described, is amazing. Why did you do that? What has it done for your employees? Talk about the retention, and what would you offer as advice to other employers in the room?
Well, we took a position, this is before COVID, obviously, but we took the position that what would be an ideal situation for me to work in and want to be there and so forth. And so we looked at everything we could do to make it a good place to work. And so now, rolling forward, we have a real campus. We just started it back then, but even then, we have the world-class fitness center, swimming pool and saunas and steams and all that kind of stuff. Some of the best indoor restaurants. We have tanning, blow drying, chiropractors, dry cleaning services. We have a daycare center that's second to none, and only because the state and the feds are subsidizing it, which is another subject, but I'm going to take advantage of it. But at any rate, so everything we do is from the viewpoint of, because we believe if people are happy and enjoy where they're working and so forth. And then when COVID happened, I was telling Shane, our president, I said, you do know we didn't build this campus to have people stay at home, right? I mean, so, but anyway, I think that has brought back people faster than some of the other companies because the fact that we have 0 to 6-year-old babies where mothers can go take care of their children, have a camera in and so forth like that, and the ease of use and so forth, it makes a difference.
So undergirding that, though, was probably a deeper reason, which you may not even have thought about until a professor from Emory, Brandon Smith, interviewed you. So talk about what came up in that interview and how that has impacted you.
Yeah, traditionally, I never wanted to proselyte people. I didn't want to put my belief on you, and there's still a lot of that today. But in a business context, I think we had a pretty good culture, but it was driven by whatever my influence could be and so forth like that. And so so we had a HR VP at that time that said, you need to hire people, you need to tell them what you believe in, and you need to hire people that sign on to that. And then, because otherwise you're going to have cancerous people that are just stepping in a totally different direction. And all of you in this room have fired people that the air just went out of the building. I mean, it felt so much better once they left, and they're cancerous. And so you need to hire that. Well, anyway, so we had called us a professor from Emory and said he was doing his studies on founder-led businesses and the culture based off of the founder, so forth like that. And he had just gotten through with Chick-fil-A and didn't charge us anything, which I was surprised about, but interviewed over 100 people. And so he comes to me last. He interviewed 100 people, comes to me last, and he says, do you mind telling me about your background? And at that point in time, I didn't talk about my background. It's just like I thought it was irrelevant. And I go, I thought we were here talking about culture. And he said, we are. He said, just be patient with me for a second. He said, I think there's a correlation between the beliefs of the founder and some of the companies. And if you think of Chick-fil-A, you think that's a Truett Cathy-led, kind of culture and so forth like that, based off him. So I told him, I gave him the half-minute version, shorter than what I just told you guys and so forth. And then he asked me another question that hit me right between the eyes. He said, what is your ideal family? And it hit me. That was what our culture was, that I wanted to create a family I never had. And so that's not knowingly, that's what drove most of you look at the elements of our culture. Wouldn't you want to, as a child, to live in a family where you're supported and you're encouraged and you're not beat up and you're not shot when you make a mistake, and that, you know, people are trying to help you and they give you advice and they're always there for you, those kind of things. And so that, it hit me like it was a huge aha experience. And so then I finally got it, and then I said, well, you know what, it's not a bad place to work either. So,
So that sense of creating family has created an environment that in turn supports families. And one of the things that I was surprised to learn was that 70% of the associates are women. Your CFO is a woman. And so obviously you have created a workplace that really supports and lifts that up and makes that opportunity available.
well, we don't hire based off of gender or any other thing. We just hire the best people, period. And I was telling Stephanie that we woke up one day and said, we got 70% of the women here. And for young guys working, this is a good place to work, by the way. But I was telling her, and this may sound chauvinistic or not, I don't know. I think an others first and service orientation appeals more to women that are really sharp sometimes than maybe guys. And so I don't know if that's why. That's just a theory. We don't go out looking for women or anybody else. We're looking for people that are going to be the best at their job. And just so happens to be mostly women are best at their job at working with us.
I think we'll take that. So let's turn to 2020, when the world upended for all of us, but especially care arena. What did Jackson Healthcare do, not only for the country, but also for our state?
Well, we, on March the 22nd, I think, on a Sunday, I had gotten a call on Friday saying, can I give you your cell phone number to the governor's staff? And I said, of course. On Sunday, I get this call, Mr. Jackson, this is Homer Bryson from Homeland Security. I thought I was getting punked. But at any rate, really was him. Some of you guys probably know him. But he basically said he wanted to start a hospital. Could we start a hospital for him? And I go, well, yeah, but why would you want to, what's going on and all that? He said, well, we've got a problem down in Albany and we need, start a hospital and help patients and all that. That was ground zero for Georgia and probably one of the worst places in the country. And I said, well, if we're going to run a hospital, I said, I have a board member that used to be president of HCA, which is one of the largest in the world. And I said, let me get him on, we'll get a conference. And so we got a call that, and then Charlie, who's our board member, that hospital used to report to him. And so he said, I know those folks, I'll drive down there today. Now, this is no mask, nothing. He drove down there at his own risk, and he's older than I am. And he said, I'll tell you what we can do tomorrow. We did. We told him, you don't have to do that, but here's what we can do. And back then, they could not even get a test back for 1 week on a COVID test. So it was really, really bad, and they were having people dying and so forth. But the bottom line is that they asked us, DHS, I think somebody here is working with them, they asked us if could we help. There was money by the feds to help the hospitals because they were going to have a huge problem with staffing and so forth like that. And of course, we were getting called everywhere, but we said, absolutely. We spent $20 million before we had a contract signed. Because I was like, I asked somebody, are we going to get paid here? And they said, you can trust them. We'll get the contract, don't worry. And I said, okay. But it was so urgent and so forth. So we helped every nursing home, I think every hospital but one in Georgia and so forth. And our mantra to our people was, you're not sending them to New York at $2.25 an hour. You're going to send them to Georgia first. But we live here. We have to take care of it. And there wasn't two other companies that could have taken on that complete assignment. There's nobody else in Georgia, but we did a lot of things that people will never know about to improve health care, and it was a real problem.
So my last question before we get to the audience questions is we've talked about corporate leadership But I'd like to end with your civic and community leadership. And one of the things that you said that really resonated with me is you can often do as much with your influence as with your affluence. So I would like for you to end with talking a little bit about the foster care,
Okay.
Faith Bridge, fostering success.
Yeah, I learned this influence versus affluence because affluence has been what I worked on. But I was testifying at a state senate hearing about 10 years ago, something about foster care, and I had done some other political policy kind of things. And a senator said, well, thank you for coming down here. We don't often hear CEOs. But I've been down here 17 years, and I've never even heard the word foster care. And it just killed me when I heard that. And I was like, I'm only going to be an advocate for these kids because there's nobody, all of the people that work for the state that help kids love them, and they're doing everything. But there was nobody at legislative level, at a high level. They didn't have their own lobbyists and so forth. So I've been dedicated. And doing that, one of the things that we've done several things. When just imagine you're 18, you graduate from high school, and your parents say, good luck, don't ever call me again. Well, what about not having parents and being told that? How would you make it? These kids are doomed to a life of failure because they have no money and no parents to help them at a critical age. And so we started a tax credit. Most of you guys have never heard of it. It's called Fostering Success Act, where you can donate to Fostering Success Act, which is our nonprofit, and get 100% tax back from the state of Georgia. And after July 1, it's unlimited to how much you can give up to the total $20 million limit. But what that does is 80% of that money has to go for direct support for these kids, home, tuition, computers, whatever, food, because getting, getting a waiver for tuition you still got to eat and live somewhere. And so we're able to turn these kids' lives around. We have over 80 kids right now, and just in the last 6 months it started, in 37 colleges. So.
Yeah, foster children. Foster children have the worst outcomes of any subpopulation of youth in the entire country. So it is critical that this work is being done. But I'm going to turn it over to President John now for some Q&A from the audience.
Outstanding lessons, outstanding interview. Stephanie, great questions, and Rick, phenomenal leadership. As we open it up to the questions, also make a note of the leadership lessons we have on the screen from Rick that are consistent with what he's talked about and are great examples of how we can be leaders. So, fire away.
Rick, is it true that you ended up somehow at Bethany College?
Doing what in college? I'm sorry.
At Bethany College in Kentucky? You didn't?
No, I did not. I went to David Lipscomb College 1 or 2 semesters, and then after I got married at 19, I moved into a trailer out on Indian Trail Road off 85, and then started riding a bus all the way downtown to work at a job and trying to go to Georgia State at night. And I just went ahead and took the economics 101 and math and finance and stuff that I actually thought I could use and still, because I was concerned I wouldn't graduate. But so I have a few hours. So I didn't go to Bethany though.
Jeff.
Yes. First, I had a very quick question, is if you have anything like an employee stock ownership, anything like that, probably you have profit sharing. The second is I've faced a lot of adversity at times in my life or tragedy, not like you have. When you interview someone or look to do business with someone, do you look for people if they've had adversity and how they deal with it? I'm a teacher, and if I see a student, I sometimes can see someone who had adversity and really tell the difference, as opposed to those whose life was a very clear sail for them.
Well, you interview, again, we want to hire the best person, period, no matter what their background is. And obviously, if they were in foster homes or something, I'm sure that would tug at us, but they still have to be able to do the job. Otherwise, I'm just setting them up for failure. However, people that have overcome adversity seem to learn things. And if people fail, and I don't have a problem with hiring somebody who's failed, as long as they've owned it, they say it was my fault, not everybody else's fault, and they develop lessons learned on what they can do differently the next time. And when our people fail, that work for us, that's all you can ask for, right? And so in an applicant, if they have used what has happened to help move them forward, and a lot of people that are successful, I will tell you, and I'm certainly one of them, I haven't met many successful people that wasn't driven by a deep-seated insecurity. If you start looking beneath some of these successful people, you'll see some of that. And so having, we don't prefer it, but it will come out in a lot of cases if they've overcome it. So.
Hey, Mr. Jackson, thank you for an incredible session. I really enjoyed the personal side of your story. I want to ask a business question. In the venture holding that you're doing, do you centralize anything, and is that beneficial?
Okay, well, I wish our CFO hadn't showed up because this is a debatable. Now, we have tension between the startup companies. We do centralize a lot of their services, HR, doing payroll, having IT work, some of those kind of things. But we basically tell the president, eventually, though, you can decide who you're going to use. We don't tell them they have to use our lawyers or whatever, they use their own. And so it's a tension between the sides of the company. Our largest company decentralizes most of their stuff, but we still have some central things that the presidents don't really care about, things like getting payroll done and some of these other things. And so they'll do it. But if our people in payroll aren't doing a good job, they have the ability to fire us and go to someone else. So the idea is we want an excuse-free environment for our president. We did never want them to come to us and say, I couldn't do my job because you didn't give me the money, your people didn't hire my people, payroll didn't go out, I can't get my email. We never want them to have that legitimate excuse. And high-performance people like an excuse-free environment. They want to be left alone, let me just take this over. And so we want to create that independence as much as possible. It's up to them. If we can provide a good service, which they're our clients from a corporate standpoint, then they're going to use us.
Stephanie, Rick, I think we have time for one more question. Clark?
All right. Rick, thanks again for all the great business nuggets that you've given us today. I know one way that you've used your influence in the way we first met was with your Going Beyond Profits initiative. And I just thought it might be helpful if you could maybe share with us how that started and kind of where it's gone and the impact that initiative has had in really bringing a lot of your philosophies to business across so many folks in the room.
Well, we wanted, under this influence, in other words, what could we do as a company? We asked that question to influence others to give back because we thought it was a good business and so forth like that. And so we paid for a nonprofit initiative 100% that basically is called Go Beyond Profit. And it just asks every company to take a simple pledge, and that is give your time, talent, and treasures to giving back. So we just had companies join up. And the other thing is, companies, were getting a bad rap back then. This is 7-8 years ago. And they, seen her as evil and all this kind of stuff. And we wanted to celebrate people that were doing fantastic things. And so we do, we give an awards and so forth, do videos. And then we wanted to inspire other people, especially smaller companies, to think about doing the same thing because we actually believe it's the best way, not just to give back. We think it's a good business concept that will have a huge return for you.
Rick Jackson, thank you for your outstanding remarks, and Stephanie Blank as well.